I'm Robert Parris, and we're back here for another Burlington Parks and Recreational COVID-19 update with Burlington Parks and Recreation Director Brendan Egan. Brendan, thank you for joining us once again.
Thanks for having me again.
So, Brendan, first off, we're going to talk about, recently this happened, I know this happened earlier this week, the cancellation of Celebrate Burlington. So just talk a little about that.
All right. It was not an easy decision. You know, it's one of those large community events that I think, you know, we look forward to, but I think the community does look forward to as well. Not only our residents, but the local businesses and nonprofits that come out and support us. You know, so it was a tough decision. We looked at the guidelines that are out there and what was going to be allowed throughout the summer, even in the future phases. And we didn't think that we could run a safe event at that time with the number of people we get. We usually get about 8,000 people throughout the day, starting with the events on the Common in the morning, and then the car show and the concert and the fireworks. So, you know, for us, we have vendors and businesses and nonprofits calling us to talk about it and asking if we were going to do it. We felt it was time to make a decision. We held on as long as we could, but we did have to make that decision to not offer Celebrate Burlington this year.
Brendan, so just talk a little about the upcoming concert on the Common. Do you know any update on that?
We are working on that. We've been working on it. I thought we were going to have an announcement prior to this. That's why the last couple times you asked. But looking at the guidelines from the state, some of them have changed a little bit as far as gatherings, and we're not able to offer them now. We're hoping in phase 3 that is something we can offer. Pretty confident of that, and we have, you know, we've had these plans ready to go since, you know, back in May, but we just weren't able to put them into place. And then as we worked with the Board of Health and on the guidelines and stuff, they're not able to be done at this time, the concerts and movies.
Do you know, like, any specific plan? Because I know we have them usually in the mid-June to early August. Yeah,
our concerts were scheduled to start next Monday, the 15th. But, you know, we're hoping if we do get through phase 2 in 3 weeks, that'll put us at June 29th, that we'll be able to start July with some concerts.
So, Brendan, how are you preparing the staff and the public as you reopen in phase 2?
Sure. So, you know, we've talked about it previously. We do have park ambassadors out there, and our park ambassadors are really working on, you know, working with the community as we go through these phases and what's allowed and what's not allowed. So everything in phase 1, pickleball courts, tennis courts, they're open. Our parks were always open for walking, as we've talked about, and not for gathering. Phase 2 allowed for some openings of the playgrounds, some fitness courts, and then sport courts like basketball. They have been closed, so those are open. And we've had signage up all the time. We've had additional signage on what is open and what is closed at some of our larger parks. So Rahanis, Simons, and Wildwood, they all had, you know, larger signs on them. The track will be open tomorrow. You know, so the track is going to be open for walking. The field, if, you know, a family wanted to go kick around the soccer ball or whatever, that would be available to be open. But again, all of the playing fields, and especially the turf fields, they're not open for group games and scrimmages and youth sports and adult sport games. They're not open for that. They're open for individual, you know, to go out there and get a workout in, or a family to go throw a football around or baseball or whatever. It's not open. Phase 2 allows for some youth sports to practice with limited numbers. And we're working with the youth sports groups on, you know, securing their space. But it's not for games, not for scrimmages. And we just encourage people to follow the guidelines. You know, the track will be open to walk around on. but we won't be sorry about that. We won't be having, games and stuff on those. Basketball courts, the same thing. You can go and shoot around with a family member, someone you're quarantined with, right? But not, go play a 2-on-2 game, a 5-on-5 game. That's not what it's meant for. It's meant to go out, exercise, shoot around. Skate park is open, same thing, no gathering there. If you can't be within, if you can't be 6 feet apart, you should be wearing a mask. If you're not feeling well, don't go to the parks. If you get to a park and you want to go on the skate park and there's 10 people in there and you don't feel comfortable, don't go in. We're asking people to err on the side of caution. And then the same thing with the fitness courts. If there's too many people there, if there's 5 people and you don't feel comfortable, don't go work out. The equipment is spaced apart on the fitness court at Wildwood that you can have 5 people working out and they're more than 6 feet apart. The fitness equipment up at TRW, there's 2 elements of the same type next to each other. So we've closed off one and one is available to use. Everything has to be 6 feet apart. And that goes for the playgrounds as well. So swings on the playground, if you have 2 swings next to each other, they're usually, I think the standard is 4 feet apart. We've removed one of the swings or secured it if the bolts might be frozen at the top. The swing operates, but to get them off, we'd be breaking bolts and, they're specific bolts. So we've wrapped them up making sure that you're responsible for your kids on a playground to make sure that, they're playing in their area and things like that. So, there is some responsibility for parents and for grandparents and people just to, self-monitor as well and make sure they're following the guidelines. Signage is still up, but we've taken caution tape and things off the playgrounds. And another thing, when we get these guidance or guidelines from the state, it's not something that we can snap a finger and everything just happens. It takes we have to go through them and figure out, can we safely operate to their guidelines, to the state's guidelines? So it does take a couple days. This last time, the governor released it on Saturday. So our staff have looked it over on the weekends. Monday, we came up with a plan how we were going to operate. We released that we were going to be opening playgrounds and that we were entering phase 2 through our social media, and that we'd have a further announcement within 24 hours. Once we had that plan together by the end of the day, Monday, we released it on Tuesday morning and said, this is what's going to happen. So, I know we do get feedback on social media and we get phone calls. Hey, the playgrounds are supposed to be open, but that one still has a closed sign and it's still caution tape. We have to get out there and take that apart. Do that as well as do everything else we're doing this time of year. And the guys have been doing a great job. We haven't had seasonal help until last week. So we're, catching up a little bit. But they've been doing a great job maintaining and staying ahead of things with our limited staff without seasonals.
Any new guidelines that the governor has released in phase 2?
So we're working, the big one that we're working through, it's a 30-page document on, a lot of people want to know on our programs, what are the programs going to look like? We've been going through them now since last week. We've had to make some modifications, a lot of modifications to programs. Some programs may be canceled. And we've gone back and forth with the Board of Health, what's allowed, what's not allowed, how do these plans look, things like that. We're pretty confident we're going to have an announcement, coming up with what our programs will look like for this summer. They're not going to look like the typical Club Simons program, the typical Park Place program, things like that. They're going to be different. We have to meet the guidelines and make sure we can safely operate. We think it's important that we offer those programs, some modified program for people this summer, social distancing is going to be huge. So in having a mask, making sure your child has a mask, making sure that, they're going to have to check in every morning and answer a list of questions on, healthcare questions. Do you have a fever? Have you traveled outside the country? Those type of questions, outside the state, those type of questions. So just, we ask for some patience with that. We want to provide the programs as much as people want their children in programs, but we want to do it safely. And there are a lot of guidelines to go by, and they have changed. When they released them last week, they came out with a revised version this week. So, we have to go through those each time they release a revised edition and make sure we're still meeting the requirements. But also, we're also planning for phase 3 and what that could look like. So we're almost complete with our phase 2, and we'll be offering phase 3, hopefully getting into phase 3, at the end of June. So I know that was a lot to say, and there's a lot of information in there, but the bottom line is the staff here is working really, really hard on making sure we can operate safely. And it's not, they give us a packet of information and it's not like cut and dry. It's a general guideline, and we have to make it work for our town. Wilmington has to make it work for their town, Danvers, Lexington, Peabody. Every community they're all different communities, and they all have to make it work for their community.
Lastly, what do you hope to see as we enter the summer months?
Not snow, no snow. Good weather, people out enjoying, getting more comfortable, going out in what is kind of, I know it's an overused term, the new normal, but, going out and abiding by the guidelines that are there. I think people are ready to get back to more typical operations, but at the same time, we have to follow those guidelines that the state puts out, and just trying to be respectful of those. And that's what we're doing as a town department, following those guidelines.
Well, Brendan, I want to thank you for coming on today for another Parks and Recreation COVID-19 update.
Thanks, Robert.